Hello and welcome back to the channel. My name is Eddie Jennings from EJSLLC.com. This video is another in my practice session series for the Red Hat Certified Specialist in Identity Management Exam EX362. Before I dive in, I want to thank returning subscribers for watching another video, as well as invite anyone who's watching, if you haven't subscribed, to click the subscribe button. Also, a reminder that these are my practice sessions for the exam. My exam is just over a day away, and so I'm doing one more review of all of the objectives and try to explain some concepts behind them, and maybe try to do some exercises to demonstrate whatever the objective is. These should not be considered training materials, nor should they be considered authoritative information. At the end of the video, I'll do a little assessment, and hopefully I'll feel confident with the objective. Otherwise, I'll probably be kind of sunk because I don't have much time to do any more preparation. But really, at this point of the preparation, you're not going to learn anything new. All these exercises do is just kind of get stuff back to the front side of your mind, so to speak. So obviously I'm learning right along with you, which is why I do not consider or advertise these as training materials or authoritative information. Hopefully I have the information right, because I hope I haven't learned something wrong. I put these out on the internet, so those that may be working on this exam might see some of the stuff that I do to practice, and that might inspire you to get some ideas of things that you can do, or little exercises you can make for yourself to practice. So in this session, I might have to break this up into two, but we're going to look at the last objective in the create and configure IdM users and user policies, and that is configure IdM as an LDAP backend for external services such as Red Hat Satellite Server or Ansible Automation Platform Automation Controller. So we're going to start with a satellite server. Now I have a Foreman server installed. It is not a satellite server. Satellite is not a part of the Red Hat developer subscription release as of October 2024. It doesn't seem like it's a part of that. I could probably get a trial of satellite, but I figured I would just work with Foreman because basically it's the same commands. So let us SSH actually into our satellite server, or Foreman server, IdM satellite, and I am going to become root because there's a couple of things I need to do. I know I need to change my DNS server. By default, this is not pointing to my IdM server, because when I first made these VMs, it was before I had an IdM domain made. So let's do nmcli conmod. I happen to know that it's the np1s0 for DNS, and I know the IP address of the server I want it to be. All right, and let's make sure that is the resolver, and it is. Let's just do a quick test here. See if it'll be able to find, what's it, LDAP, TCP, IdM, EJSLab.com. Oh, it's looking for an A record. I'm like, there should be a record there, SRV. There we go, that looks better. All right, so we can find basically the DNS records and such that it needs. For satellite, in order to install packages, you actually do that through what would be satellite maintain. I'm using Foreman maintain because I have a Foreman and Catello installation. And you do this instead of the package manager, or it's running the package manager in the background, but you do it this way so that way you won't, or you have a far less chance of breaking your satellite installation by having some package be installed that isn't intended. This is especially important when you're doing package updates for this. So we're going to do Foreman maintain packages and install, and we're going to install the IPA client package because we need to enroll this in the IdM realm. Now, I think there's a couple of ways to configure satellite to use LDAP auth against IdM. This way that I'm doing here is basically what I had learned through training, but that's what I'm going to try to have happen. But I think you can do some of this stuff just through the GUI as well. One thing to keep in mind when you are working with satellite, after you do something like satellite maintain install, or in the case of the next thing that we'll do, which is actually turning on the IPA authentication stuff, is it's going to run through the installer, and that will take a little time. I think I think the last time I timed this, maybe 5-6 minutes, something like that. But something to keep in mind is, and this I recommend for any Red Hat test, but when you start your test, look at all the objectives. You don't necessarily have to read them all super closely, but skim them and get a kind of a plan of attack, because what you could do while this is chewing on the Foreman installer bits for installing IPA client, let's say there's a playbook that needs to be written for some other objective, an Ansible playbook. You could be working on that and then switch back to this. Now, if context switching like that, kind of messes with your thought process, then obviously don't. But that's an opportunity to be efficient with your time. I can't remember if this is a 3 or 4 hour exam, but that time will go faster than you think. So look for opportunities to be efficient. All right, so that looks successful. Now I'm just going to go through the wizard for the IPA client install. No, we do not want to use special NTP stuff. Actually, we want to copy this. There's a reason for that. This is curious. So it's going to talk to replica 1. That's what it has discovered, versus discovering it from versus discovering the IPA server as IdM lab IdM server. So kind of nifty thing to see. All right, and I'll do admin and good old monkey 123 with the capital M so it's secure. I'm sure if you've been watching these videos in this practice session series, you are tired of hearing that little joke over and over again about my secure monkey password. Okay, so IPA client install was successful. Let us see if we can get a Kerberos ticket, and we can. Let's do IPA host find. Let's see if there's satellite replica 2. I am curious because there's one thing that we're going to do that is going to fail for this, and I haven't figured out exactly why it is failing. I do the same thing with some of my other training materials and it's fine, but for whatever reason when I practice it with my lab it fails. And I think it is possibly a replication issue, but we'll see. I'm actually going to SSH into IPA or lab IdM replica 1. You get a ticket. This is not something you have to do for this particular objective, but there's something I'm wanting to check here. IPA host find. This should obviously have it because it enrolled with replica 1. Okay, so the next thing we have to do is create a service principal, and this is what, or part of the process of getting satellite configured to use IPA or LDAP authentication is it's going to pull down the key tab and dump it in Apache. So we have to make the service principal first. So this will be IPA service add. And just experience has taught me it is looking for all caps HTTP, and then of course the service. And I'm going to go to replica 1 and see if I can find that service or not. Well, I guess I could try to do find. Usually you don't do that with. Oh, okay, so it does return it. All right, I'm going to do service show. Yep, it's managed by that, which I expect to see. I'm going to go into my second replica. Because the problem I was having, it basically was saying it can't get the key tab file, and I was wondering if it's maybe a replication thing, like the service principal is not available on all of these. IPA service show. Oh, I need to get a ticket first. Okay, and an admin monkey 123 helps if I do the credential right. Okay, and there's the service. The other thing I want to look at, I'm just curious to see what it's going to use. All right, so that's everything that it had. Okay, cool. All right, so we have made the service principal. So now what we should be able to do, and I'm going to do a Foreman installer -- help, and I'm going to grep for IPA. You will be using satellite installer if we're doing this on an actual satellite system. All right, and what we're going to do is run what would be satellite installer with Foreman IPA auth, which is what it will actually be for satellite, and that equal to true. So Foreman installer equals true. I'm going to do info for the logging level just to see a little bit more. And this, I expect this to fail, and it's going to fail complaining about the key tab. My workaround for this is grabbing the key tab myself and putting it where it was trying to do it via the installer script here. I am hoping if I have to do this on the actual exam, their environment is going to be in such a way that this isn't going to fail, but it might be, so I'll see what I can do if faced with that. And actually, while that's happening, I'm going to run another playbook since I rebuilt my environment. I'm going to run. This is actually from a previous. It's actually from a previous practice session video. I'm actually going to remove the users present and users present and copy what I had in EX362 practice to here. Okay, and we're going to run this. I'm going to need some test users. So, oh yeah, I remember from that practice session I had to change the collection to the redhat.rel_idm collection. All right, let's check on satellite. Yep, and it failed, and it complained about getting the key tab. I have no idea why this is a problem, because if I were to run this exact command as root, we should get no problem at all. And I guess case in point, let me do something first before I do that. All right, so good. That's changed. If I were to go to my, I'm getting ahead of myself. The last step for this is going to be restarting all of the satellite services. So I'm going to do that. Foreman maintain service restart. But I still expect this to fail because I don't think it grabbed the key tab file. And of course, this takes a while because I have not given these VMs a lot of resources. You know, I have actually more RAM on my lab server now. I should probably give these VMs some more resources to work with. But the basic process while we're waiting on this to restart is you install the IPA client, you enroll the satellite server, you do the IPA install equals true, and then restart the satellite services, and you should be able to authenticate with your users in IdM. Now you can make service principal, not service principal, you can make a host-based access control. I think the name of the service you have to make is satellite_prod or maybe satellite-prod, but we might take a look at that. All right, so it's finished, but I get the feeling this key tab file is not going to exist. And of course, this could be just a bug in Foreman as well. I don't know. All right, let's see if we can stat this file. Yeah, that file's not there. So authentication is going to fail, but just to prove that it fails, let's do lab IdM satellite. All right, so test user 1 monkey 1 2 3. And it worked. Now, granted, it's saying permission denied because this user doesn't have any actual permissions on the Foreman or satellite server, but I've, of course, pictures or it didn't happen, right? Prior to recording this session, I wanted this is one of those things I hadn't touched in a while, so I wanted to run through a couple of scenarios, and I could not get the install to work. And I still don't understand why the install isn't working because unless, all right, ls-la etc httpd conf, there is no key tab file in there. So I don't know how this is, unless I'm looking in the wrong place. Let me go back up. I don't know how that worked. It's conf. Yeah. And to make it work, what I did was basically run the get key tab command and bring the key tab in there. Now I'm curious. This is why my videos, I guess, tend to take a while. Logging in as the little local admin user. And I want to go to administer. We should see, yep, test user 1, and it shows as external because it was authorized by Active Directory. I should fail my exam just for saying that, right? It was authenticated by IPA. Now, the other thing I wanted to look at and see if this was configured. Yeah, external. Okay, so it went ahead and, oh wait, no, it's just showing users. Oh, I think that was authentication sources. Oh, this is just showing the users that are in there. Let me click at it. I'm just curious to see what this is going to look like. So this is effectively what was made by the command line. The other thing that I think you can do, create LDAP authentication source, and you fill this stuff in. I'm not 100% sure on that because what I've done is the command line, but I don't know how this worked now, but yay, it worked. At this point, I will take it. Let's see how we're doing on time. Do I want to split this? Nah, we'll try to do it all. Go big or go home, right? All right, so we've made the backend LDAP for satellite server. Now let's try to do this with Ansible Automation Platform. Now, one thing we're going to make with this is something called a bind user. And the idea behind this is a user account that basically can read the directory and not do anything else. It's not a user that users could use to log in to servers and such. It is solely something that can read the directory. I don't think you have to use a bind user for what I'm going to do. You could, in theory, use any user account that like a regular user if you want, but I think as from a security perspective, it's probably better if the sole purpose of this user is to allow Ansible Automation Platform to read the directory, then it's probably better to try to use a user with the least amount of privileges. So before I do that though, actually let me go into the GUI for this. There's a couple of things that we're probably going to need this for reference. I'm going to make a couple of user groups. So test group 1, I'm going to add test user 1 to that group. There's a method to the madness. And then test group 2. Again, you can do this all on the command line if you want. I just wanted to do it in the GUI this evening. This is going to be one of these things I'm going to see how well or how much I can pull from memory. I haven't been able to find much offline documentation for it to use as a guide if you get stuck in the exam. So let's see what I can do. Log out of this. Actually, we'll just close the tab for this. Get rid of these tabs too. So I'm going to do this on the actual IdM server. All right, so let's SSH into lab IdM server. All right, and I don't think there's an IPA command we can use for this. We're going to have to use the stuff from I think it's from the Open LDAP packages, but the LDAP modify. So, and this tells us -X is simple authentication. D is the user that we are going to use to bind to the LDAP service to be able to do whatever changes we want. And in this case, I'm actually going to use the directory manager user. W is it's going to ask us for a password. And then I'm actually going to redirect some data to it. This EOF can be used like if you want to do multiple lines, you do the EOF, and then when you do EOF again, that tells Bash that, hey, you're done with your input. All right, so the user we're going to make, its distinguished name is going to be, we do a colon for this. I think it's man5ldiff, I think is the man page that can give you some guidance on the format here. The UID, and we're going to just call it Ansible. Now there's a particular part of the directory which I don't think you can see in the GUI for IPA, but it is common name sysaccounts, common name Etsy, and then the domain components. And it seems like this is a container kind of designed to hold things like this. All right, that looks right. Change type. This is going to be an add. I think you can do add, modify, delete, and there's one more. I can't remember that off the top of my head. Let's see. We don't have to specify this because it's going to come from the distinguished name, but the UID, Ansible, and there's all sorts of user things that we can specify here, I think, if we want. The object class, We're going to make an account. It's also going to have the object class of simple security object. Do not ask me what makes these things, you know, their object class. That dives into like the LDAP spec, and that is both beyond my, you know, at the top of my head knowledge of LDAP, and I think kind of beyond the scope of what I'm going to need to know for this exam. We're going to make a user password for this, and we're going to use our good old monkey123 with the capital M for security. Password expiration time. I don't know if I have to include this, but if you're dealing with this, the format that it's looking for is year. So I'm going to say this password expires in 2025 on December 31st at 23:59 and 59 seconds. You can do Z for Zulu. NS idle timeout. This I think relates to once it makes a connection, how long that connection can stay authenticated. And I think 0 basically means forever. And I think just to make a basic account that its sole job is just read the directory, I think this is all that I need. And then it's going to ask for the directory manager password. So monkey123, and it made it. All right, so we have that. Now let's go into our automation controller. And here's where we're going to set this stuff up. Go into settings and LDAP settings. And this is where I say there's some little tool tips and such about things, but if you're blanking on syntax, you're kind of out of luck with this from what I have just gathered in my practice. So the LDAP server URI, I'm just going to use regular LDAP because I don't think this trusts the cert. I could always go into, if I wanted to make this trust the cert, well, I guess I could try that. Just see what happens, right? Let's become root. Is it an etcpki or etcipa? There it is. This is an etcipa. So we need to get that CA cert. And I'm going to do, okay, good. It's just the basic thing. We'll do kind of not the cheating way, but I don't feel like dealing with SCP. So I'm going to copy this cert. Let's go into AP server. I'm going to go into CA trust, source, anchors, and we are going to make ipa.crt. We're going to paste the cert. We're going to run update CA trust. Okay, so in theory, we should be able to use LDAP-S for this, but let's see what happens. So LDAP-S, or you can do just LDAP and then the start TLS. I guess I can do LDAP and start TLS. So lab IdM server IdM EJS lab.com. The bind password is going to be monkey123. Sure I have that right. Nope. There we go. Monkey123. This needs to be group of names type. I guess we'll do the start TLS. The bind DN, which is that account we just made, is UID Ansible. CN sys accounts, CN Etsy, DC IDM, DC EGS lab, DC com. We're not going to worry about a template, though. That little kind of highlighted there will be useful in just a minute. So you can set up a requirement group, which basically says if you're not in this group, you can't log into Ansible Automation Platform. Or you can make a deny group, which anyone can log in except people in this group. So let's do I think this is why this group of names type is a thing, is for these. Let's deny test group 2. So I'm going to go back and we're going to do IPA group find. Okay, and it's admin. Just want to make sure I'm actually typing that right. Copy that. KNet admin. There's my ticket. IPA group find. Well, I was hoping it would give me the distinguished names. So IPA group show test group 2. Seriously? There's my distinguished name. So we're going to say test group 2 cannot log in. I do not remember off the top of my head if you define both, what the behavior is, but generally things will, denies will trump access. All right, this is where some of the memory stuff gets to come in. So the LDAP user search. For our users, we are going to, you have to surround this in quotes, we're going to look in the users, CN accounts, DC IdM, DC EJS lab, DC com. We are going to do scope subtree, because if we happen to have anything underneath that, we want that to be checked. And then we get to feed it an LDAP query of sorts. This is, LDAP queries and when I use them, I have to look stuff up and then I will know it decently well, but then it's something I don't touch all the time. And this, even with the, with working for this exam, but we're looking for UID equals, this is actually a placeholder of sorts. User, oh wait, this whole thing has to be in parentheses because it's an LDAP query. UID equals, yeah. So this actually needs to be a %sign. This is a placeholder of some sort. I have not found good documentation for this. If you happen to have some, feel free to link it, make a comment and link it. I have seen this placeholder in other documentation, but I have not, at least just with some of the digging I've done, which granted hasn't been a ton, but I haven't found a document that says this is the explicit placeholder for something else. I've just seen it in use with things like this. All right, LDAP group search, we need to give it that because since we're using groups, that's going to be CN groups, CN accounts, DC IdM, DC EJS lab, DC com, scope subtree again. And this is going to look like a much more sane one. We're going to look for object class equals, and I believe it is IPA user group. Yep. I guess in theory, any of these could work, but we're going to be using this one. Okay. User attribute map. This, if you want, you can populate certain user attributes with information from your IdM directory. This is again one of these things of like it's easy enough to get the LDAP side of what these attribute names are. And the only thing I could really think of for this would be if you're looking at the Ansible playbook options for deploying things like this and the properties there, but I haven't found good offline documentation for the Ansible Automation Platform side of what these user attributes are going to be called. So I'm going to try to see what I can remember off the top of my head. First name maps to given name. I happen to know that. Last name is going to map to SN, and I think it's email on this side. Oops. It's going to map to mail on the directory side. This I'm going to set as null because if you just leave it there, then it is going to error out. Ask me how I know. If you want, you can set things. I just happen to know one off the top of my head, which is super user, and you could say is super user : and the distinguished name of a group to where, well, I guess I could try that. So is super user, and can you tell the things I have practiced? Because I happen to have that from memory, but again, I'm not sure where I can go to reference the is super user part. So this will be CN test group 1, CN groups, CN accounts, DC IdM, DC EJS lab, DC com. You can also I believe, use groups to map different organizations and different teams, which would be highly useful in a production environment. I'm not going to do that with this. So I think all of this looks good. Now we save and see what it complains about. Expected a dictionary and got type string. So what have I done wrong? Oh, this, I know where I messed up. I didn't do my commas. Fix that. Well, unless they're wanting this, just one big string, which that might be what they're expecting. This looks JSON-y with the curly braces. Expected dictionary items, but got type string. Well, maybe it doesn't need the quotes, unless it wants quotes here, which I could see that. Well, I know a dictionary is key value pairs. Here's the key, here's the value. So I'm not going to have, this will be, I guess, something I try to maybe review tomorrow to get top of my head to check the syntax, but there's no guides to syntax here. Now, if they do provide the offline documentation for Ansible Automation Platform, like if they somehow give us the offline website documentation, there are tons of examples in there. I have a feeling that's not going to be there. So this will be something I maybe try to review tomorrow to get to the front of my head. The rest of this I think is good. Nope. So I'm getting that with all of these. You know, I wonder if the colon, yeah, I'll bet that's it. Okay. So let's put this to the test. User flags by group is super user, and then we'll do the distinguished names. So CN test group 1, CN groups, CN accounts. Probably should have copied and pasted this. IdM, GS Lab, com. Because I know the other thing up there is broke, so this might give me, yay, it didn't complain. So that's one. All right, that makes sense. Okay, this makes a lot of sense. I'm not sure if we actually have to do the initial quotes then. That might not even be a thing. You know, and this also, I think about, you know, when I'm looking at Ansible facts, lists versus dictionaries. Huh, how about that? All right, so now let's see if it'll save. All right, that seems okay. So let us log out and put it to the test. So we'll do test user 1, monkey 1, 2, 3, and do we get into AAP? That looks pretty good. I may be happy about that, and it looks like I have access to basically everything, because remember, these are super users. You see it says LDAP, and yep, user type system administrator. Now if I try to log in as test user 2, it should just basically say incorrect username password, which I think is kind of a test user 2 monkey 1, 2, 3. Yeah, you're just going to get that, even though the reason is because of the deny group. Case in point, if I were to add, let's add test user 3 to test group 1, this should allow test user 3 to both log in, and they will also be system administrators. Yep, I'm in. Let's look at users, and there's test user 3, and they are a system administrator. All right, so it was rough, but we made it through. So I think if I have to deal with these on the exam, I have a good chance, I think, of getting it right or getting enough right to pass. We'll see. So hopefully you found this useful. At the very least, you may have found things I'm doing that are wrong, and in your own studies, you can recognize that and say, hey, Eddie's doing it wrong. Don't do it the way Eddie's doing it. But if you found this useful or enjoyed it at all, make sure you do click like. I want to thank returning subscribers for watching another video, as well as invite anyone, if you haven't subscribed, to click the subscribe button, that is, and ring the bell so you know when new content comes available. Really for the last, see, we're in October now, so for the last 8 months, I have not put much content up because I'm on my run the gauntlet of trying to earn RHCA certification. So I'm doing all my practice session recordings like I typically do, but hopefully when I finish this, I can actually start getting them online. So as always, thanks for taking the time to watch, and I'll see you the next time.